your Squishmallow or SquisyMishy pattern from Let's Make It Academy, and you will scroll all the way down, and then you will see the pattern here. So just download it and print it out. It is on regular legal size paper, so it will fit. And then you will continue along with the tutorial. So let's get started on this SquisyMishy. Here are the things you're going to be needing. Your fabrics for your SquisyMishy creature, whichever ones you've chosen. And I know that's a lot of fun and can be a little bit like, you know, decision making. I'm not sure which one should I choose, but these are the ones that I chose here. You're going to need a spool of thread and a double-threaded needle on my favorite pin cushion. Double-threaded needle with a double knot, because we are making this by hand. We're sewing it by hand, but of course, if you are a machine sewer, please feel free to sew it on your machine. You're going to need your shears for cutting fabrics, straight pins, and your pattern pieces that are printed out. Okay, you're going to have to cut these out. There were only 2 to print out. And of course, I save my scraps for felt, for the nose or the snout area and the eyes. If you know how to embroider and want to embroider, you can also embroider in those details. It's up to you with embroidering floss, that is. So anyway, these are the things that you're going to need. So the first thing you're going to do is actually cut out your paper pattern pieces. So if you know anything about sewing, you'll know that your shears that you use for your fabrics are never used on paper or cardboard or, you know, ripping open your Amazon boxes, but you actually have to use scissors, or should use scissors, that are created for paper, or basically really just used only on paper, because that way they are dull but still good enough for paper. The ones used for fabric should always be super sharp, because it gives you very clean edges and cuts when working with fabrics. So just like I'm doing, I want you to work on cutting out all of your patterns and making sure you even cut out the darts, and I'm going to show you how to sew those in a moment. So my pattern pieces are cut out, and I'm going to take the eye piece and the nose piece, and I'm going to push it aside so I don't lose them, because I don't need them until the end, until my SquisyMishy is pretty much stuffed and ready to go. So now is the part where you're going to get your main fabrics, meaning the main body of your SquisyMishy, and whichever one you chose. I chose this really nice and soft, kind of like crushed velvet. So you're going to cut all the pieces out right now. That's what we do next. We take all the pieces and we cut them out of fabrics. So I know I want the main body to be this blue velvet. So you always pin, and this is a scrap of mine, but I always save scraps purposely for this reason. You always pin and cut from the back of the fabric, or the wrong side of the fabric. This is the right side, this is the wrong. So I'm going to place it down, pin it, and cut it out. Now, when it comes to this piece right here, you're going to need 2 of these, because it tells you there, and I clearly wrote it for you, cut 2 out of fabric. You don't want to cut 2 this way. You need 2, one like this, and then you need the other one flipped over this way. Now, if you enjoy cutting, you can pin one down, cut it out, then unpin it, and flip it over, pin it, and cut it out that way. Or what you can do, it's up to you, is you can fold your fabric. Okay, for example here, right sides together, fold it right sides together, and you're going to pin it down and cut it out that way. This way, it's the same exact thing, and you only cut once, and you get 2 pieces. So this is what we're going to start doing for this one. So I'm going to pin, because I know I want the main body of my SquisyMishy to be this really beautiful dark blue velvet, and I will cut around it without cutting the actual paper pattern. So as you do that, you're also going to think to yourself and know, but at this point you should really know, the ears and the eye details, and you're going to do that as well. So what I do when this is cut out is I sort of just give it a nice little trim around. then I push them aside. And I work with all my pieces. So remember, for this one, you need a front this way, and then you need to flip it over and cut it that way. The same is true for the wings. So I know for my wings, I want to do this fluorescent pink. I love it, spandex. And I know the insides, I want that color. So I'm going to do two. I need one this way and one flipped over. So I'm just going to fold, pin it down, and cut it out. So I have both of the pieces that I need. And this spandex particularly doesn't have a wrong or right side. Now I'm going to work around it. And then I know that my tummy, I want this really fun fabric here. Also a little bit stretchy. Sort of a spandex. I wanted to add that to the wings as well, but I figured I wanted also a little bit of diversity. So the tummy's going to be this fun pattern, and the wings, I figured, let me just leave them this fluorescent pink. Anyway, work it around, holding it together. So I have my front of the wings cut out. Now remember, you also need the back, and I know that my back, I want to be this velvet. So right now it's all about cutting and choosing and making decisions about where or which colors you want for the pieces, what you want your wings to look like, what you want your body of the squishy to look like, your ears. I know I want the backs of my ears to be the blue velvet, but I want the insides to also match the tummy. So just the wings are different. But then the back of my wings, I know I want blue. So when I turn my squishy around, it's all blue. So think about these things, follow the directions, cut out however many it is that it's asking for. So a note on cutting. Every time you're cutting fabric, you always should bring your scissor all the way down to a close. And there's a reason for that. If you tend to cut things like this, and I will show you, if you tend to cut things like this, you may get a jagged edge. So if you, and when you cut and you bring your scissors all the way down, you're actually giving yourself a straighter edge. So just bring them all the way down and guide them as you bring them all the way down. These are your darts here. Don't forget to cut these out. Okay, so I cut out all my pieces, and just to review, to make sure you have the same ones, you're going to need two of the SquisyMishy backs. So one this way and the other one the opposite way. And I always keep my patterns nearby because sometimes I refer to them when I sew together. You're going to need one of the fronts, 4 wings, because each wing has a front and back, and I have 2 wings here. You may decide that maybe your SquisyMishy doesn't have a wing. That's up to you. You need 1 belly and 4 ears, same thing as the wings. You have 2 ears, front and back on each, and then you have the bottom of the SquisyMishy. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to sew together all of these darts. And the darts are like the V's that we cut out according to the pattern, and it gives our SquisyMishy a rounded turn and curve. So before you do any sewing, you always want to pin together and make sure that your fabrics are lined up. I'm taking a moment longer because when you work with velvet, it's a little bit like, I don't want to say challenging, but yeah, I guess it is challenging. It tends to move on you. But of course I had to choose it, right? Because I want my SquisyMishy to be navy blue. All right, so I am purposely using a thread that doesn't match or coordinate my fabric just so that you could see my stitches. So it's really important that we do small stitches here because small stitches are tighter stitches. So I am going to carefully So about 5 to 6 stitches in 1 inch. And if you don't know what that means, you can refer to my course 1 in my Let's Make It Academy. It is a free trial, so you can sign up for it. And I show you how to sew 5 to 6 stitches in 1 inch, meaning they are pretty small stitches. So again, the whole purpose of this, I'm actually going to back up and follow over those stitches. I could remove that. I'm going to back it up, meaning I stitched front and now I'm going to go backwards as well. I'm just going to follow along here. And I also show you in my courses how to thread a needle and tie a double knot. But I am taking my time and pulling this through because this velvet is a bit thick for hand sewing. But again, I want it to be this gorgeous blue, so I am not going to give up on this. All right, so now I'm going to do the same to all of the others. I'm going to end off my stitch. I'm going to pull. If a knot causes, do not worry and trim it. And again, I'm going to end off the stitch, and I show you how to do that right through the loop in my beginner free courses as well in Let's Make It Academy. So now when you open it up, it has, the front has a little bit of a curve. Okay, I'm going to do the same to all of these darts as well. I have all of my darts sewn together on the back pieces, which I'm going to push aside, and my tummy piece has its dart, and all of them are sewn. One thing I want to mention to you is that on the pattern pieces, whenever you see this little line here, what you're supposed to do with that is you're supposed to, as you're cutting out your pattern, make a little snippet there in the fabric, a super tiny snippet, because we're going to use it later as we are putting together the SquisyMishy as matching points. We're going to use these to match together pieces. So wherever you see snippets, just make sure that you have your snippet added. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the front of the SquisyMishy. So this is your front, have it facing you, right sides up, and your tummy goes in the center. So there is a little snippet there that tells you that is the very center of your arch. And this tummy one doesn't have a snippet, but it's really simple. You just fold it in half and you're gonna add a snippet, but make sure that your snippet is really snippety, snippety small, really tiny. Don't make it too big. Okay, and that's going to be your matching point. So what I mean by that is you're going to match the snippets here, and that's how you know that your center of your tummy and the center of this arch are matching. So with that in place, I'm going to put a pin. And now what you're going to do is you are going to turn this edge here, and you're going to make it follow this curve. So you do it step by step, just little bit by little bit, okay? If that's correct English, that's what I said. Little bit by little bit, you'll get there. So we will turn a bit and pin. Then we will continue turning and pin. And what may seem like impossible, like, I can't do that. Yes, you can. It does work. I do it all the time in so many of my designs. And you're going to keep it turning until you get the edge to match with this edge here. And what you can do is you can pull it there first, just like I did, and then you match the rest here. And it just somehow always fits. Okay. Just take your time as you make it fit, because remember that tummy is adorable. And as you're sewing, you're going to make sure that they are lined up, right? They're all lined up like this. You can even hold them in place as you're sewing. That's what the pins are for, but just telling you. All right, we're going to do the same here. You can do it where you take the whole, the end and this end point and this end point and match them together. So you know where your ending is right there, and then you know that all of this has to go in there. As you're sewing, you remove the pins. Number one question my students always ask me, what do I do as I'm sewing? Remove the pin. So just, if they're in your way, as soon as you get up to them, remove them. Because the whole point of the pin is to keep two fabrics together. So if you sewed, you no longer need the pin. So here we go. I'm going to start on this side. I'm going to give this side my first start with the sewing, or maybe this side, doesn't really matter. If you did not choose, and we're smart, didn't choose velvet, you'll see that you have a much smoother time keeping these together. So I already know that this one needs to be here, so I'm going to leave it here until I make my first few stitches about 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of the fabric. Okay. So let me keep it up, bring it up there, and it is a little bit of a challenge when you're working with velvet, but the end result will be super cute. If it shifts a little, it's not the biggest deal. All right, so here we go. I'm going to back up, meaning once I do my really small stitches, I'm going to get in there and actually cover them up again, meaning I'm going to retrace my stitches with a second line, just like I did with my darts that I closed up. So if you're sewing and it pulls like this and the fabric puckers, you don't want that. So pull it out so you fix that little mistake. And I'm going to show you what to do in the event that you're sewing and you're about to run out of thread. Number 2 question asked by most of my students. So you're going to keep sewing until you either get to the end of your fabric or you have about 2 to 3 inches left of thread on your needle. Get this guy out of the way. Shifted, here we go. See how I remove the pins, straight pins, as soon as I get up to them. So I'm seeing that on my needle, I have about, well, I could keep going, but I have about a little thread left. So I know I need to end off soon and I need to add more thread onto my sewing needle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an end off stitch. And here's how you do that in case you haven't watched it in my previous classes. You go and just make a small stitch right where you made your last one. Pull it through, but not all the way. And then you see your little loops there. You're going to put your needle, just trying to fix that. You're going to put your needle through the loops and you're going to pull tight. That's one. And I always like to do it double, just like you double knot your sneakers. And here's my second one, just for that extra security. And here we go. Cut that. I'm going to rethread my needle and finish sewing this arch. So I've sewn the tummy to the front of the SquisyMishy. This part's ready to go. It's looking adorable so far. So what I want you to do now is I want you to work with your 2 back pieces that you cut out. And I like to keep this handy because what we have to do is sew these 2 together. And this is the back of the toy. And this is the side, this side of the patterns are the side that attach to the front of the SquisyMishy. So what we want to do right now is we want to sew this side. So even though I designed this pattern, sometimes I have to hold it up just to make sure, or match it up to this just to make sure, okay, this is the side. So you see that I had to do that. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to line these up and I'm going to sew this together the same exact way I just sewed my other pieces. I'm going to pin as usual. As my velvet walks, it's like I pin it and then it is not in the same position. Okay, and I'm going to sew it using my 5 or 6 stitches per inch down this curve. So from this all the way down to the curve here. Again, here, I'll show you on paper. You're going to sew from here all the way down to this point. That's it, about 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. Back of my SquisyMishy is sewn together, and I'm going to put it aside as I work on my ears and my wings. So I'm going to use my fabric clips to keep these together as I sew, because like I said, sewing velvet is a challenge. It's like it walks on you. You clip it together or you pin it together, and all of a sudden it's like not in the same place. So my clips will actually do a much better job on holding these together. All right. I know that I want the fronts of my wings to be fluorescent pink. So right sides go together. Right side of my spandex and my velvet are touching. And you're going to sew what's like a pouch. So you're going to sew, I'm going to sew all the way around and come to here and leave this open. And then I'm going to turn them right side out. The same thing with the ear. I want the front of my ear to be this fun fabric, and then the back to be the velvet. So I'm going to put them and place them right sides together. I'm going to use my clips. To hold them together, and I will get a much better hold. Same thing as these. And I'm going to use my 5 to 6 stitches per inch to sew these wonderful wings and ears together. Yes, much better hold. Now, I tell you, why did I choose this difficult fabric? Well, I know why. I wanted a very cute SquisyMishy. How adorable. Okay, so I have 2 ears to put together, and I have 2 wings, and we are going to get started. I'm going to make a magic knot. There we go. Start again. Okay, give it a nice trim. And we're going to get started. So wherever I start, a point that I'm going to have to turn inside out, I know that I want to make a very strong knot there. And sometimes I don't trust the knot, not that you shouldn't, but what I do is I kind of make a stitch. I make like a few stitches in one place, because these 2 points here are going to be your pressure points when you turn it right side out. And what's going to happen is if your knot is not strong enough, it will fall apart, and you don't want to do that. Because that's the point when you're sewing, when you're just like, oh man, but I don't want you to give up. So don't do that. See what I did there? I secured it, and now I'm going to sew regularly. At least 5 or 6 stitches in an inch. And I will move my clip as I sew. Again, you may choose to do this on your sewing machine if you have and you enjoy using your sewing machine. I know I love using my sewing machine, but being that some of you may not have one, I wanted to show you that you can do this all by hand. All right. Way better idea. And I believe I'm going to need a thimble. So here's my thimble. If you've ever seen one of these and never known what they're used for, it's literally to protect your finger and help you get a better grip on the needle. And I compress it, right? I can push the needle through without feeling like the needle's about to pierce my finger. So you can use it however it is that makes you comfortable. I know I was feeling a little bit of pain while I was trying to get that needle through. So I'm going to work my way around and continue the perimeter of this wing with my very small stitches. Now that I've sewn my wings and ears together, you just have to turn them right side out. And I like to explain to my students that it's like a t-shirt that just came out of the wash or the dryer. You just turn it right side out through the neck hole. So then you have your ear that looks adorable and ready to go. And don't worry about any trimming because that's going to end up on the inside of the SquisyMishy. So I turned these right side out as well. Same thing, the wings. And I decided to stitch down the center. You don't have to, but you can do that as well. You can hand stitch down the center. You can go, instead you can stitch around the perimeter of the wing. You can stitch whatever, a letter, your initials. You can do a heart. You can do whatever you want to the wings. I decided to give it sort of like a V, just to sort of keep my front fabric and my back fabric together, because it is a little challenging working with the spandex and the velvet. They move a lot. That's all I mean. Okay, so now that these are ready, we can move on to the next step, is placing your ears and wings onto the front of the SquisyMishy. So you're going to have your SquisyMishy front with the right sides facing you. Then your wings, you know, are going to go somewhere around here. You can keep them higher, lower. I want mine about here. So in order to do that and to make them flip out, what you have to do is actually turn the wing this way. And I'm going to make it stick out just a bit about there. I purposely designed the wing longer here so that we have room to play with that way. So I'm going to place it right there. And when we end up turning the SquisyMishy inside out, the wing sticks out. Okay, so this is how we do it. So I'm going to pin it in place here. And I'm going to do the same exact thing on the opposite side. You can measure to be exact as to where you place the other wing. I'm going to eye this guy. I know that it's about here, but again, you can measure it to be very exact. And just to make sure you like the way it looks, you can actually fold it out. You know, because if you have it up a little, when it, like if you have the wing turned up a little, when it comes out, it'll face down. If you have it this way, it'll face up. I know I want mine straight. So I'm going to keep mine right there at about the same exact level. And I'm going to pin this down. And now for the ears. You can leave the ears exactly as they are, or you can make them sort of with a fold in them. And I think the fold is really cute, or you can even fold them this way. So just imagine when your SquisyMishy is done, do you want to see the ear like that sticking out? Do you want it folded over in half? Do you want it just squished the entire thing in half, or just the front half folded over? Play with it. However you want it, you can do that first. So I know I want mine just with the, I think I want it this way, with this corner meeting this corner here, but sort of on an angle. I like this look for the ear. I'm not even sure what kind of animal this is. It's just cute. So I know that I want it to stick out at about, let's see, as I play with this creature. Yeah, I want it about there. So since I want it there, I can't leave it that way. I have to flip it over this way. Now just to test, when I flip it over, yep, it's going to stick up. So what I want to do is I want to stick it here or place it here, but past. I want this edge to go past that edge just to make sure when I'm sewing, I catch it all. All right, so we're going to do that right there. And I'm going to put a pin in there to hold it all in place. Now I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to take this side, I'm going to place it over, and I know, actually this side I have to flip over this way. And I know I want it right about there. So I have to flip it over, place it here. And I'm going to pin it in place. And then it is ready to go. Now here is where you should measure, just to make sure your ears are in the correct place. All right, so I'm going to use my measuring tape. So I do see more space here. If you want that look, It's about a little more than 2 inches. If you want that look where your ears are off, that's fine. I definitely don't want that look, so I'm going to move mine over. So it's about 2 inches, just a little over 2 inches, just like this one. So I have the same consistent look for the ears. All right, now that that's done and ready to go, what I'm going to do is, before I put the back on this way, is I'm going to sew these in place, because eventually we have to take the back and we have to face right sides together this way, and we have to sew it on, right? Now, with these pins in there, it's going to be a little, not difficult, but like I don't want you to get scratched with the pins. So what I tell you to do first is to just do a basting stitch across all of this. And I'll show you how to do my double threaded needle. I'm going to make sure that this is laying flat here, the wing, when I say this. And I'm just going to put a basting stitch. And what a basting stitch is a really simple and large stitch, just to hold something in place. Sometimes in some projects it's actually removed. For this one, we're not going to even bother removing it when it's done, because we probably won't even see it. It'll end up on the inside of the project. It's just to hold it in place, so I can remove the actual pin. Okay, I just want to hold this guy in place. Let me see how that feels. Yep, that's good. I am going to actually do a simple end off here. One is enough. It's not for stability. It's just to hold it in place. And I'm going to repeat on this wing as well. And I'm going to do the same exact thing for the ears. This way I can remove the straight pins. Just making sure they're in the same place. I'm going to move it down just a bit. There we go. And now I'm going to base stitch it in place. And I'm going to do the same for the ears. With my ears and wings basted in place, I'm going to take the back of my SquisyMishy with the right sides, I'm going to place it over here, right sides together. So I'm going to use this seam with this seam, and I'm going to match them up. You're going to want to make sure your seams match up always. So I'm going to hold them tightly together, and I'm going to pin. Actually, I'm going to use my clips. I'm going to clip. All right, here we go. And I'm going to make sure, to the best of my ability, to match up the edges. Keeping the wings and the ears turned inside. This way, when we turn it right side out, they stick out. And I'll show you what I mean. Here we go here. Matching. If it's a little off, don't worry. It will not throw your project off. Mine will naturally be, because it is a velvet project. And it is definitely a challenge to sew, like I've mentioned like 20 times. Turn the wing in. And here we go, matching. Okay, so because my velvet is super thick, the best thing for me to do is to actually sew this on my machine. So I am going to sew it, keeping it about 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to do an end off stitch here, or back stitch there. I'm going to sew all the way around, and then I will show it to you as we flip it around. If you're not using a thick fabric like this, then you just hand sew it, of course. So I've sewn the perimeter of the SquisyMishy body, and now we're going to turn it right side out, and you can see that the SquisyMishy is coming along. It's looking cool. It's definitely unique, and I think yours is too, because you are the designer and you're choosing all of the fabrics and whatever it is that you want your SquisyMishy to be and look like. Okay, so now the last thing, well, not really the last thing, but really for the whole body, is to add the SquisyMishy bottom. So here we have the slits, right? So you should have tiny little slits cut there, and that's gonna help us to match it up with the sides here. So you're gonna turn your SquisyMishy wrong side out, and you're gonna take the oval bottom, and you are going to match it up with the side seams, right? So these are your side seams here. So this side seam here is going to match right sides here with the right sides of the inside here. It's going to match. So that little slit that you cut there, okay, is going to match here, the side seam. And I'm going to put a pin in there to keep it together as my pins go flying. And then the other one, the other little slit there, I'm going to put it on the opposite side. So we're going to sew this on, but we're going to leave an opening for the stuffing. This is the part where we leave open so we can give it its fiber fill. Now I'm going to take the center and I'm going to pin it right here to the center of the belly. And as you can see, it fits really nicely all together. All right, now I feel like too many pins get in the way when I sew. So as I'm sewing this, I'm going to just hold it together so the edges match up. All right, now what my plan is I'm going to sew from this seam here, or this dart. I'm going to sew all the way around to this dart here. And I'm going to end off really tight there. So this opening here is where I'm going to do all my stuffing. So I have sewn around the entire bottom, and I left the opening where I said I would leave open. So the darts were here on the back, and that's where I left the opening. And now, just like this is a t-shirt, you're going to turn it right side out, and you will see your SquisyMishy become alive somewhat. It'll start becoming alive, and you know what I mean by that. Okay, so there we go. The ears stick out, the wings are sticking out, and this is the front, which doesn't have the nose detail or the snout, whatever we're going to call that, and the eyes. It doesn't have it on yet, but you can see the back. And this is what I wanted. I wanted the back to be all this blue velvet. And then when you turned it over to the front, it had a few pops of color. So now for the fun part is we're going to actually start stuffing it. So you can get your fiber fill or stuffing at any craft store or fabric store, or honestly, mine came from Amazon. So you never want to take a bunch of stuffing and just try to stuff it in at once, because you'll get a really lumpy and bumpy project. You want to take small bunches of it, fluff it up, and then get it through the opening of your project. And you want to always push it in towards the furthest point away from the opening. So we're going to push it all the way into the top. And you're going to see your SquisyMishy really start taking its shape. So if you see that it starts getting lumpy or it's looking a little off, just use your fingers, get in there and move that stuffing around to some good points in there. Now, if you don't stuff your SquisyMishy too much, you'll get a nice soft squishy one like most people want, I would assume. But if you want it firmer, you just stuff it up more. And it's totally up to you. There's no rules. This is totally your project. So if you don't want it so fluffy and sort of squishy, then don't do it that way. Make it firmer or keep it like the original types. Totally up to you. That's what's fun about making things. So I've stuffed my SquisyMishy to a point that I like, and I decided to make this one a little bit firmer. And we're going to close up the opening here. So you can see my red thread coming through because I sewed with red and pink, so you can see what I was doing. But if you use a coordinating thread, you definitely won't see yours. All right, so you don't want to just hold these together and sew, because you're going to see the stitch. So we're going to do what's called a blind stitch. So what you're going to do is you're going to turn this in just a little. So the back here, you're going to turn it in just a little, and you're going to turn the bottom here just a little. Just turn it in a bit. All right, and with the a little bit turned in, you're going to hold them together. All right, so I know it's a little hard to see because this dark velvet doesn't help. But again, I'm going to repeat that. You're going to turn this in a little and then turn this one in a little, and you're going to make them meet. Now, I'm good at holding it together, but if you're not, it's totally fine. What you can do is you can turn these in and put pins and hold it together. I'm just going to hold mine because I can do that. And I have my double threaded needle with coordinating thread or matching thread. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a blind stitch. I'm going to sew on the panel that is folded in. So the fabric that's folded in, I'm going to sew across there. And then I'm going to come, like I always say to my students, across the street. So I'm going to come right over here across. And then I'm going to pull tight. Now, the thing is, I'm sorry, I'm losing my grip there. The thing is, you want to make really small stitches here, right? You don't want to make large ones because you want this to hold together, and you want to stay up on top where you folded your fabric. So don't jump and take big leaps there. And I'm going to keep going until I close this. So now I'm here. Again, I did decide to use a really thick fabric, and because of that, I am pulling this thread a little rougher. But if you have a regular cotton or something nice and stretchy that's squishier, you probably don't need to pull as hard as I am. So I am going back and forth. SquisyMishy is all sewn up and closed. It's pretty much almost ready to go, but it just needs its eyes and the nose. And it's really simple to do with the felt and some embroidery thread. So for this one, I wanted it to be wild and different, like totally me, sort of. And these that I did, I kept them a little bit more like the actual originals. I chose colors that were lighter and pastel, and then the eyes, I kept them black. And the nose, I did sort of coordinating in the same family color of the body. But for this one, I want it to be very different. And I noticed when I put the black, the eyes don't really show. So I decided to make these eyes blue and this nose purple. Let's see how that looks. I cut the felt down to a smaller piece and I'm folding it in half. And I'm going to place it down and I'm going to make sure I don't move it, like it doesn't slip. I don't want to pin it because, unfortunately, the pin is a lot larger. But you can try it that way if you want, or you can even hold it down and draw and trace around it. But if you have a good grip on it and you know you're not going to make it move, here's the way I do it. And again, the whole trick is not making the pattern move. It's like your fingers are is the scissor. What am I saying? Your fingers is the pin. Apparently, I can't think deeply about what I have to say and do two things. All right, here we go. So I'm going around, and why we're using felt for this is because felt doesn't fray like fabric. So it's not going to get messy on the edges with all the fibers sticking out. So because of that, you want to make sure if yours came out like this, a little jagged, it's normal. You're going to clean it up to make it look super clean. All right, so just take your time and trim it. You can make the eyes a little bit smaller if you want. It's totally fine. And if you know how to embroider, you can embroider the eyes in just like the original Squishmallows. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm just cleaning this up because I know that these are pretty much, the eyes are pretty much the finishing details, and I want them to be really clean. Okay, I think that's great. So I'm going to just place it here just to see what they look like so far. And then I'm going to cut in the same way my nose, but I just need one nose. So I've gone ahead and I cut out the purple nose. And as I place the eyes here, I realized that I want them to be a little bit rounder because the these have sort of like a straighter bottom, and I realized I wanted them rounder. So let me show you how I do that here so that you can do the same. You're going to want to cut them out together so that they are exactly the same. All right, and you're just going to trim it, or you can turn it into a complete circle on your own if you want. I sort of like that the bottom of the eye is a little bit straight, but you can change it up. Remember, this is your project, and you're giving these a whole different look if you want, if you choose to. That's the cool thing about sewing. When you're creating, you can just make the project however you want it. Okay, just a little bit more. You know what? I think I'm going to take a little off the top. And notice how I cut a little. Guys, cutting fabric, any kind of fabric, is like getting a haircut, right? If you want to go short, you're thinking, all right, let's start with going short just a little bit. Let's say your hair is long. You can always keep cutting again, like maybe you try it for a few days and then you cut your hair again the next day. But if you go short all at once, I mean, you can't really put your hair back. So I say the same thing about fabrics. Go slow and cut a little. All right, yay. I'm keeping them just like that. And now you're going to need a thread that coordinates, meaning it matches your eyes. And we're going to sew these on. So let's sew the nose on first. I push the eyes aside so they don't get in the way, and I pin the nose down. And we're going to start sewing with a similar color thread, as best as you can, match it. And we're going to start from the back because we want to hide the knot back there. And you're just going to go and make a simple running stitch, which is the stitch we've been using. Let me just get rid of that loop. It's the stitch that we've been using, and you're just going to go around, all around the nose. Now, you want to keep your stitches as small as possible because the larger they are, unfortunately, the larger they are, the greater of a chance your nose won't be as strong or won't have as strong of a hold. So I'm just going to carefully work my way. Here's actually what I do. I make a stitch, pull it through, and then I back up. Let me see if I can, there we go. I back up and I go back here and I cover that stitch. So I kind of go over it again. You don't have to do it this way, but I think it gives it a nice straighter, clean line going all the way around. And see what I'm doing? I'm going back into that edge of the stitch and I'm moving ahead. I show you how to embroider in the same exact manner. So if you have taken my courses in, like, for example, the soccer ball, making that, you're doing the same stitch for those soccer ball lines. And I'm going to make my way around the entire nose like this. Now that my nose is sewn in place, I'm going to sew the eyes in place the same exact way. So I'm going to see how I want them. I'm going to place them and decide that the placement is exactly how I want them to be. And then I am going to actually remove one out of the way and pin this one down. And I'm going to use the same sewing method that I did for the nose. And using the thread that coordinates, I'm going to start from the back and continue. If your thread sticks out, you can try to stuff it under, but do not worry because in the end, we will actually trim it. And as soon as your pin starts getting in the way, you can move it, but make sure your eye does not shift because it will, it'll be crooked. The eyes and the nose are in place, we are going to embroider the little dots in the eyes. So for this one here, I use the black eyes with the white dots. So for this, I think the white would stand out a little too much, so I'm going to try black. So this is embroidery floss, and in the stores, you may find it and see it like this. So what you're going to do is you're going to use a needle that has a large enough eye that will take this entire floss. But what this means is that there are actually 6 threads in there, right? So you need an eye that is large enough to take that floss, but also thin enough to go through the felts. So they're actually called embroidery needles. So you may have to do a little bit of testing and experimenting here. So I found a great needle that will fit through the entire felts easily. And sometimes it does give you trouble when you're trying to pull a thick embroidery floss through an actual fabric, but you're usually okay with felt. So what I'm going to tell you to do is actually trim the embroidery floss and then sort of with your finger, sort of like flatten it out and press that eye right on, because remember there are actually 6 threads there. You don't have to tie it. Notice how I just leave it like that. And then I'm going to give a decent length of it. And what you're going to do is you're not going to even knot it. And let me show you why. My whole goal is to put a dot up here in the right eye in the top right area. So I'm going to start all the way down here and I'm going to explain to you why. Actually, I'm going to start down here. What I want to do is I'm not knotting this embroidery floss. So I'm going to make sure that the end of the floss ends up in the stuffing. So notice what I'm doing. I'm starting there, and this is what I mean by giving it a little tug. What I meant before, it could be a little tough, but once you get it through, it's fine. And I'm going to be really careful not to pull all the way. Now, I know it's right there, the thread, right? So if I pull it, it'll come out. So I'm going to be really careful. And I'm going to make just a little stitch right here. And now I'm just working on the felt, so it should go through much easier. I'm not going to pull too hard yet. There's 1, and I think 2 is plenty. You're not going to probably need more than that. I'm going to just move slightly next to it, but not too far. I'm going to pull. I'm actually going to put my needle through this loop right here as this string gets caught around the ear. And I made sort of a knot, so it's like a little dot of an eye. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right in this area, anywhere here near the eye, doesn't matter where, go under it, and then come out through the upper head over here. And the reason why we're doing this is we can't really knot it and leave a knot anywhere because you'll see it. Like I can't really end off anywhere here. So I'm going to cut it. I'm going to give it a little tug, cut it without cutting the fabric. And now that ending is somewhere in the stuffing. And this eye really, this dot will not come out. So there's one. And now I'm going to do the same thing for the other one. So it's going to go here in the upper left corner. I'm going to start down here. I'm going to pull it through. The first time is a little tough. Remember, don't pull too far. Right there, I stopped it right there. And I'm just going through the felt. And this time I'm going to make a knot with it. And then I am going to go in there somewhere behind the dot. And I'm going to pull the thread through because it's going through a lot. Sometimes you got to give it a little tug. It's normal. if it doesn't come out too quickly. Tug it. Now, you could look at it and say, does this look great? I like this one, but this one right here looks like it needs to be a little bit thicker like that one. Because if not, it's just looking strange. So you can work on it again. And I like to show how I don't get perfect creations to begin with and right off the bat, because you know what? This is real. This is real life right here. No one's perfect. Here we go. Let me see if that will do it. Okay. Just testing and looking. All right. I think that's a bit better. I'm going to leave it just like that. And we have the eyes on, and it is officially complete. This squishy is complete and ready for whatever. You can give them away as gifts. If you're having a party, you know what? You can even make these as party favors. But here's what's really great about them. You can actually make a whole bunch of different types and put them in bags, just like I got mine. And you can have your friends pick, and they don't know which one they're going to get. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope you try my free trial on Let's Make It Academy. And if not, I'm glad I could have at least shared this with you.